Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Why, hello there. Welcome back, everybody.
And I want to break things down into littler pieces today a little bit. So I'm going to put this one up on EEARTS, even though we're going to tend to put a little bit more of the spiritual side of things on EEARTS and try to go with the hardcore news a little bit more on Evolutionary. But there's things I want to still touch on a little deeper. We've been touching on like history a little bit more than perhaps we have in the past. I myself have been reminding myself of the history of this globe as much as we could decipher with all the distortion, twistedness, and perversion.
Well, right. I mean, you have to look through it in a certain kind of a lens of understanding that you're not dealing with regular human beings.
Absolutely. So, Russian President Vladimir Putin just announced that he will formally recognize the independence of the DNR and LNR. These are the separatist-held regions of the Ukraine. So what does this matter? Well, this is basically, it's kind of another step down that road. And listening to his speech, which honestly, when he speaks clearly, and he gives a lot of history. He doesn't give you a lot of bluster. He's kind of factual. He comes across as the guy that if he had to, he would then he would explain to you why he's about to take his gun out and shoot you in the head. But he's just going to let you know clearly why, with no bluster, no BS. Whereas what we see a lot when we look, like I was telling Cindy, when I see number 46, I don't even see a human anymore. I mean, it's just completely controlled entity. Not that there's not strings attached to every politician, because there is. But as far as clarity of a person that has their own mind and can speak their own mind to a degree within the constraints of the parameters that they're given by their controllers, because there are controllers that control all these politicians, at least there's a clarity there. And, do I think that he could be a stone cold killer? Absolutely. This guy was, the head of the KGB. He, as I'm winking, he wrestles with bears, naked in the snow and 40 below.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, so he does put off this essence like he is going to speak with some type of truth from his soul. I mean, so as far as that aspect goes, you're getting a bit of a human being, and he actually, I don't want to say that he has moral fiber, but he has a moralness about him to be true to himself, even though that trueness might not look real good to us.
No, and it's, what a crazy world this is. I said to Cindy, I was looking at two topics that were up on a forum, and one of them said President Putin is going to be speaking, addressing the nation, and the other one said the dictator of Canada is going to be, giving us a BS speech. And think about how everything in this world from, when you were growing up in my age, everything was that, here in the West, things were wonderful. Over there, behind the Iron Curtain in that time, things were horrible. And now it's kind of politically, universally on the bad side, obviously, as there are no freedoms for the population of the world. That's the bottom line. Until we force change, and we have to force change, how are we going to do that? That's the big question. And I've been actually just like meditating on it again and having some good conversations with some of you guys that we work on a regular basis. But getting back to the news. So tensions are mounting. They're mounting. They're rising. This did not de-escalate. And he basically said that modern Ukraine is a creation that was given to the world at the breakup of the Soviet Union by Russia. Do you know that the first capital of the Russian, I guess it would have been the Russian Federation. I think that's what they were known as back around 890. Not 1890, 890. The first capital was Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine now. So this was one basically united people. But again, the map has changed like decade by decade as far as Europe and the globe. It's part of what we see. So it's a lot of things that he gave were very logical. Like he said, talking about the weapons, that if Ukraine was to become part of NATO, they could hit Moscow in like under 7 minutes. And he said that basically is the equivalent of letting your potential adversary put a knife right to your neck. And would that make you feel comfortable? So it was a clear speech, a straight speech, and it did nothing in my mind to make you feel that war wasn't coming. It kind of felt like the opposite, because we know what is going to come from the other side. Interesting too, he referenced that in 2000 he spoke to President Clinton at that time, and he said, well, what if we wanted Russia to join NATO? And the answer he got was NATO wouldn't be interested, because Russia would be too big of an entity to have a NATO that couldn't be necessarily controlled like the other aspects of NATO. So that was just interesting. And again, we know there's controllers controlling all these people that we see. So 46 is going to meet with National Security, or is meeting now, about this. And of course, they all receive their orders from on high, so to speak, or we could really say down below. So these separatist regions are recognized as independent. And of course, we see there's been shelling ongoing, and this is increasing. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is the fact that tomorrow is 2/22/2022. And if you follow numerology, it's a mirror date. These are typically the strongest energy flows that can come about to bring solid, real change. 6th Tuesday, 2/22/2022. Very rare. In the current millennium, there are only 60 mirror dates. Believe me, the powers that be understand this totally. They are so absorbed in the occult, which really is just the mysteries of the matrix that we live in. And we do live in a matrix. And much of our world around us is really it's a mental construct. They understand this completely. And this is why they utilize certain key dates for key events. So on February 22, 2022, a unique mirror date will come, or as it is also called, 6th Tuesday, combination of numbers 02222022 is read the same on both sides, called a palindrome date. Such occurrence is very rare. For example, again, only 60 times in this millennium, 1,000 years, is this going to happen. Numerologists call this day magical and associate the date of February 12th with karmic events that can radically change the fate of a person. Also on the date of 2/22/2022, you can perform rituals, make a wish, since the energy of this day will bring changes and a positive vector for the future. Now, of course, the powers that be, this would be a perfect day for them to start a major conflict, would it not?
Oh, it sure would, but it works two ways now, because now we have a new understanding of energy and we can plant our own seeds.
Absolutely, and thank you for pointing it up. And so, by coincidence, back on the 22nd of February, 1700, and of course that lacks a little bit of the energy being 1700, but it was still 2/22. So began the Great War, the Great Northern War. And that was a conflict in which a coalition led by the Tsardom of Russia successfully contested the supremacy of the Swedish Empire in northern, central, and eastern Europe. The initial leaders of the anti-Swedish alliance were Peter I of Russia, Frederick IV of Denmark-Norway, and Augustus II the Strong of Saxony, Poland, Lithuania. So Frederick IV and Augustus II were defeated by Sweden under Charles XII and forced out of the alliance in 1700 and 1706 respectively, but rejoined it in 1709 after the defeat of Charles XII at the Battle of Poltava. George I of Great Britain and the Electorate of Hanover joined the coalition in 1714. for Hanover and 1717 for Britain, and Frederick William I of Brandenburg, Prussia, joined it in 1715. This war lasted 21 years, 6 months, 2 weeks, and 5 days. And Russia gained territory there. They gained Estonia, Livonia, Ingria, as well as parts of Kexholm and Viborg. So, there's been nonstop wars. As we said, wars and rumors of wars. There has never been a time where there hasn't been wars and rumors of wars. Now, we've talked about this at probably a half a dozen times. 2022 is the Pluto return. That's the day that Pluto returns to its original position, just where it was, on July 4th, 1776. So again, when you have these things happen, astrologically speaking, Pluto represents destruction and rebirth. So it's perfect time, if you were of an occult mindset, to initiate a great conflict. Because it's the time when the Pluto return comes to the United States. So astrologically speaking, you might be taking advantage of energies that could be advantageous if you wanted to ultimately bring about perhaps the downfall of the United States as we know it. And so when you add that energy to the mix, very, very curious, is it not, to see everything that we see geopolitically happening right now. And I want to get Cindy's take on this Pluto return, as she's been doing some babysitting.
Gotta love it.
We're bringing up the Pluto return again.
This is so important. This is a time where the planets really don't give us much of a choice as far as what we are going to do, how we are going to behave. I've noticed when I read people's charts, and whether it's a child's chart that's 2 years old, or whether it's somebody who's, lived a lot of their life, it's like, wow, I've gone through all of these things and this really did happen to me. And it seems like there's really no choice but to kind of surrender to these energies. So that's why we got to pay attention to what we are predicting, so that we have a way to navigate and understand our lives and understand the changing of events and how is that going to affect us. Where can we place that momentum? I think that's a really, really good idea.
Well, like I was saying in reference, like astrologically speaking, if Pluto is in many cases the energy of destruction, but yet rebirth. So from a negative standpoint, you could be looking at the breakup of the U.S. or taking advantage of the U.S. at a weak point in time, where obviously, I'd say most of the power structure of the world is in a weak point of time right now, obviously. And yet at the same time, we could look at it like, well, this is a great time for rebirth, to push that, no, we're not going to go down the same path because, hey, we're waking up. We're awake, and more people are waking up.
I know this is such a great time for repatterning, because when you think about as above, so below, these things are happening in our very lives. People's lives are kind of being taken apart, examined, and they're going to be put back together again. This is the repatterning that I speak about. But what does it look like on a 3D level? Well, for us as individuals, that's what it looks like. Things may seem like they're falling apart, but really, in a way, they're kind of falling together as they should be. And then, you look at the family as an individual, and this is happening to families. It's happening to, towns and cities, and you look bigger and bigger and bigger. And globally, you have this thing that's happening.
Absolutely. So again, put out your positive intentions, especially, tomorrow would be a good day for fasting and positive intent meditation. And as we see, almost 60,000 Ukrainian military personnel concentrated near the borders of the republics of Lugansk and Donetsk. This is the Russian defense chief speaking right here. I'll give you guys the links. You could listen to this if you wanted to and see the destruction that's coming in. The shelling is increasing. Again, this is a slow burn right now at the moment, and that could, boom, change like that at any time. Russia is closing the airspace over the Sea of Azov starting at midnight. And that's this portion right by these breakaway republics, which they're now recognizing as being independent entities. So this is big. I mean, this is really, really big. Things could be kicking off shortly in a major way. And here we see from South Front, 5 Ukrainian saboteurs eliminated, 2 infantry fighting vehicles destroyed inside Russian territory. So things are already happening. It's already happening. And this was a live stream of the speech that President Putin had given. When we check in, see what the U.S. Naval News looks like, here we see again still 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 carrier strike groups still centered. That's a lot of firepower that's centered way over in reach of China and Japan, and could also be put into support of Australia and New Zealand. And we have just one that's showing over here off the Pacific coast, the Mackinac Island, and Harry S. Truman is still stationary in the Mediterranean. So this is about the same as we were last week. Same thing, 117 total ships deployed out of 296 ships in total. So, it looks like it's going to get a little bit hotter, absolutely. And meanwhile, we see the Capitol fence going up. As we know, it was under construction again. And you got to ask yourself, if we're in a society...
Sorry, kids.
Sassy's going after the trucker going down the street. If we're in a society where you have what you have going on in Canada, when you have the U.S. putting up barricades around its Capitol buildings, that's pretty sad. It's pretty sad. It shows there's serious problems going on.
Right. I mean, it says that there is a lot of things that they are anticipating. So we can go with the information that we have, and they're very, very vague when it comes to giving, and these reasons. Well, why do we have this iron fence up? Well, we know exactly why it's up. So we just got to follow our intuition there.
Absolutely. Keep your vibes high in the most trying of times. And that is not an easy thing. That's, again, why things like mantras, yoga, meditation, Qigong, all these things can help us. Thank you guys for your support on Patreon and on Ko-Fi. We couldn't do it without you guys. Also, check out Medicinal Foods. Use coupon code EEA. Get a discount off the order. Lots of stuff here that could most definitely help you build your immune system, which is critical in these times, as well as detoxing. And do check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com to learn more about us. As always, guys, as Sassy says goodbye to everybody, and she's saying stay prepared. Don't let your guard down.
Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.